Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Triangle Travel and Thames Valley Travel Zoom conference. Delighted to welcome so many of you in this evening, both from our Triangle Travel clients, but also from Thames Valley as well. Welcome to you all. And also a very special welcome to the gentleman who you see on your screen before you at the moment, who is Joe Lavers. And Joe is joining us not from Japan, but from his office, which I think is the first time you've been in your office in several months, isn't it, Joe?
It is almost a year, actually, to be honest, Tim. Yeah, we had a little bit of a get-together today, so it's been
when you say you had a little bit of a get-together, how many people are normally in the office?
Well, the office actually, at its peak, had about 70 people, but there were 6 of us today.
6. Okay, yeah, we know how that feels. Joe's very kindly joined us this evening to give us an insight from the benefit of his somewhat extensive experience into the amazing country, which is Japan. It's one of my top bucket list destinations, as I know it is for a number of people that are joining us on the call this evening. But before that, I'd just like to give a little bit of an introduction to Joe. And as always, I like to do a bit of background research into the guests that we invite. And Joe has spent quite a bit of time in the travel industry, most recently before he joined Wendy Wu, which is about, 3 years ago? Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, 3 years next month.
Next month, nearly time for your birthday party. So you were with Cruise Co before that. Were you offshore? Were you on board ship or whereabouts?
No, not at all. We actually put together we took full ship charters for music cruises, is what we did. So 80s cruises, 60s cruises, that kind of thing. Yeah, good fun.
Excellent. So you do have a track record in the travel industry, and you have been around a little bit. But before you returned to school to study as a mature student, I'm not quite sure that anybody of the age of 27 can be literally described as mature. I understand that if anybody in the house is interested in maybe talking about power tools, or is looking to buy or sell a house, or maybe even enjoys a little flutter at the poker tables, you could be their man. Is that right?
Yeah, I've done a few jobs before I decided to settle in travel, and I've been in travel now for it's 30 years now.
Excellent. Well, what we really enjoy though, Joe, is we really enjoy a deep personal perspective on the destinations that we talk about. And one of the great things that we found during these Zoom conference calls is that the more detail we can get in, and the more understanding and the more exposure that we get to your personal experiences, the better the kind of impression that we can generate, the better the atmosphere that we can create. And hopefully what we'll do is we're able to plan some more fantastic tours. So what I'm going to do now, if I can work the technology, is I'm going briefly to share my screen with everybody. Now, if I can work this one correctly, then what will happen is there'll be a beautiful image coming up on the screen any moment now. Does that look okay to you, Joe?
You've got you need to go to the slideshow.
Hey, okay, bear with me, folks. Do you know, sometimes the technology is marvelous, and sometimes I can work it. Here we go. Just 1 second.
Oh, it's tense now, isn't it? It's tense.
It's tense, isn't it? Isn't it just? Right. How's that? Have I managed to make it work?
Now we're in.
We're in. Fantastic. Okay, so the background really is we're going to be talking about Japan. And one of the things that everybody wants to know is, how has Japan coped with the COVID crisis?
Yeah, they've been a little bit slow on their vaccination. They are actually in a third wave at the moment. They do have some local lockdowns until the end of June. But they've managed to keep a real good lid on the number of infections and serious illness. They've got about 3% of the population vaccinated at the moment, but they didn't start until the end of February. And that was due to approval of the various medicines and then actually getting the stock. So they've just had some big orders come through now, and they plan to have all of the adult population vaccinated by the end of September. So right. That's their plan. And my sort of experience of Japan is once they put a plan in together, they generally deliver on it. They're pretty efficient.
I was about to say, once the plan is agreed in the Japanese ethos, it is very much delivered on time and according to that plan. So, are you feeling confident that September onwards will be the start of extensive travels back to Japan from the West and from the UK in particular?
Yeah, I think it will be slow to begin with, to be quite honest. I think we're pretty confident of 2022 definitely going ahead. Probably the back end of this year, there might be it may well open, and there could be travel from international countries into Japan. But I think the real sort of uptake will really be for 2022, to be quite honest.
Excellent. Okay, Joe, you very kindly presented us, prepared for us a presentation here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you, everybody, a little taste of what it is that we're going to get involved with before we pick your brains a little bit further. So hopefully this will work. Now, there's some beautiful images there and also some wonderful sounds. But I mean, culturally, Japan is clearly very different from the West that we're used to. Is there a way, Joe, that you can maybe summarize some of those key cultural differences that we'll be looking for and experiencing a little bit more this evening?
Yeah, I'll try. I think just their very nature, they're incredibly polite. They're very quiet, quite conservative. They don't sort of talk out of turn, for example. Even though some of the younger people are, traditions are changing, obviously, for the younger demographic of Japan, but they still have a very much a looking up to their elders. It's very much even with how they say thank you and the fact that you bow at different angles depending on how important somebody is. And I liken, I guess, a very sort of way of explaining it is they are very efficient. They're always on time. They're always polite. They can't do enough for you. And I just find that fascinating. Simple things like not really being able to eat and walk on the streets is a prime example. So you can eat on the street, but you should be standing still. If you're walking and eating, that's frowned upon. And it's those little tiny quirks that really make you feel, wow, this is very, very different country.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Very, very interesting, Joe. We're gonna touch on more of those in a wee while, but I just want to show you another one of these little films. So it seems to me that there's a variety of different things that we need to possibly take into account. Now, given that there are those cultural differences, with Wendy Wu, do you provide guides that help our clients and our guests to make sure that they're not that they're kind of I hate to say behaving themselves, but behaving appropriately, shall we say, given that there is such cultural differences? Yeah,
absolutely, we do, and I think that's one of the things of doing an escorted tour. I mean, we only use local guides. So some other companies, you might be traveling around Japan and it's with an Australian guide, for example, because they've lived there for a while. We only use local guides, and their whole job is to make sure that you have the best time. And they are there throughout the whole of the tour with you. They eat in the same restaurants as you. They pick you up in the morning. They're on the coaches with you. They're doing everything that you're doing, and you really get to know them, and they are absolutely amazing. So they will give you those cultural insights during the course of the tour. The guide that I had when I did my Wendy Wu tour was amazing. I mean, he was 85 years of age, and I struggled to keep up with him. And he was exactly what you wanted from a Japanese guide. You know, he really did. He was tiny. He was lovely. He was really charming. He was quite funny. He was quite quirky. He was just amazing. And also, we prepare our clients well. So I've got a little booklet here. I don't know if you can see it there because of my background. But we provide a full travel guide, phrase book for all the customers that book with us, so they can do a little bit of research even before they arrive.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think one of the things that we need to have a little think about, let me play this on next one. So, Joe, the language is something which clearly is a totally different alphabet, totally different language. How do we get around signage, conversation? How does it work?
Yeah, well, like I said, you do have your guide with you all the time, which is great. And they're there to give you any advice if you do want to go off maybe after your touring to do a little bit of exploring yourself. They can certainly help you with that. In the major cities, English is fairly well spoken, certainly in restaurants and places that you would visit, for example. There is signage that is dual signage, but it's really when you start getting out into the more rural areas that you find English is not spoken very much at all. And that's where you could struggle. And I think, again, that's the beauty of doing a tour, is that you not only get to see the big cities and the big tourist sites, if you're a bit off the beaten track as well into more rural areas, but you're not stuck or struggling.
Fantastic. So, do you speak a lot of Japanese?
Me, I speak absolutely none. So I can do your hello, your goodbye, and your arigato with your thank you, and that's about
it. Arigato.
So I don't try the accent.
No, neither do I, clearly. Okay, Joe, right, let's get into the details of things, because the first thing that springs to my mind, because I am the character that I am, is the Japanese cuisine. Now, is it really all raw fish?
No, most definitely not. No, it really isn't all raw fish. And I think it's some of the best food that you can have in Asia, to be quite honest. What you'll get is generally traditional food, but there's also a bit of a Western twist that we give as well. So it's a sort of 60-40 split. The restaurants we take you to, absolutely fantastic. They're tried and tested, and you'll often get trays of food. So that they'll have sort of like 6 dishes on, which would include things like miso soup, rice noodles, lots of vegetables, prawns, for example, tempura batter. Yeah, absolutely amazing. It's not particularly spicy at all, Japanese food either. And the great thing again is that we can cater for all dietary requirements, because obviously we know which restaurants we're going to. The guide is there as well to make sure you actually get what you've whatever your dietary requirements are. But no, the food is incredible. And the other beauty is that you get regional variations as you travel around the country. So you could have it's a savory pancake. It's made out of cabbage, and it's called Takayama. And you'll have that in Osaka, and it'll be very, very different to the same dish that you would have in Hiroshima, for example, where it's made more with noodles. So you also get these various different takes on the dishes as you travel around.
I mean, we've got an image in front of us there which shows, I mean, a couple of the most iconic, I use this word quite a lot, unfortunately, but a couple of the most iconic, the cherry blossom there. But I mean, that seems to be an outdoor restaurant. I see nothing. Oh no, there is a little bit of Western script over here. Oh, and it says lager beer. But how do I order if I don't have any Japanese? How does that work?
Yeah, quite a lot of the restaurants will have images on the menu, but what they do, which is quite a funny thing to see for the first time you ever see it, is quite often in the windows of the restaurant they'll have it's plastic versions, if you like, of the food. So like when you see a film set and you or you go to a museum, say for example, and it's Victorian England, and they're you can see the stuff made out of plastic. They have this, they call it food modeling, and they have this in the windows, and it's a very bizarre thing to see first off. But I think Rob's also been to Japan and has seen a fair bit of this as well, and it's quite bizarre.
So are these life-size models?
Yeah, so it'd be like a plate of food as you would see it, but it's made out of plastic. And
how fascinating! I mean, it's a bit of a variation on the pictures of place and chips that you might see in Torremolinos.
Yeah.
I suppose it's the Japanese way of doing things.
Yeah. I think the thing with the food as well is, the food that you're going to be served is fairly, good for Western palates. We won't be sort of showing you some of the more stranger or outlandish foods, but that they do eat over in Japan. And this is me with my guides, so there you go.
Okay, so is this the gentleman that you were telling us about a moment ago?
Yeah, absolutely. He's 85, believe it or not.
Blimey. He's 85, and I'm just looking at him and thinking, I wish I looked like that now, never mind at 85. So what have you got here then? That looks like a plate of an interesting plate full of, there's noodles in there, there's pork. What do we got?
Yeah, so we just went to a small ramen soup. Basically, and that's what you can see in front of you there. So a bit like going to a Wagamama's, I guess, in the UK, but much better. I mean, completely off the scale better. And,
fantastic. Obviously, the dress code there is very relaxed and laid back. Is that typical?
Yeah, it is. Certainly, when you're in restaurants, it can be pretty laid back. It's like anywhere, I think, depending on the type of place you go, you might have to dress up a little bit more if you're, going to somewhere that's a 5-star, for example. We do a lot of stuff culinary. I see you've got the image there of the miso soup making. So there's various things that you can do on our tours that involve either learning about how things are made or doing them yourselves. We visit a wasabi farm. We learn how to make miso soup on some of our tours. There's some great experiences, but the food is incredible.
Yeah, so not only can you taste the experience, you can taste the results of the experience as well. So you're going to make your own miso soup, or I mean, this I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one. Is this the beginnings of the tea ceremony?
This isn't actually the beginnings of the tea ceremony, but no, that's fine. But it is served in a restaurant that's very similar to a tea house. So this is more in the traditional Japanese style. You see the Takayama flooring that they have there, but you've got the Western style seating. But when you do go to a tea ceremony, it is a very similar kind of setup where the tea master will be kneeling. But for us Westerners, they do allow us to actually sit on.
No, that's my fault. I was getting a bit carried away. But so you say this is the Western style? Is that with the backs? Bearing in mind there are no legs on these chairs. Yes,
absolutely. So, but you're sitting in a much higher position.
Right. And how comfortable is that? Realistically?
Yeah, it's great actually. And another restaurant we went to was very similar in the fact that the seating was quite low, but you're still up. So where you actually sort of went down into a well almost, and the table was at that kind of floor level.
Gotcha. I'm with you. Now, this is another food that I've heard a lot about is the beef. I mean, I've heard about Kobe beef and Wagyu, and tell us a little bit about this because this looks absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so the Hida beef, this is from up in the Alpine region. So up in Takayama, And up there, like with a lot of alpine regions, of course, when the grass is grown, it's incredibly fertile. So, you know, the cows that are eating that out in a fantastic natural environment. And so naturally, that's when you have that beef in that area, it's just incredibly, incredibly tasty and just so delicate as well.
Now, I do hear that this is an interesting and slightly unusual delicacy. So, I mean, it looks, well, no, Joe, just tell us, what is this?
Yeah, so I was in Kyoto for this, and we're in the market, and I'm looking around and everything else. And from a distance, I saw these, and I thought they looked like toffee apples. You know, the like you get from the fun fair.
Yeah. From a distance.
Yeah, and I thought, you know what? I haven't had a toffee apple in years. I quite fancy that. So I really made a beeline for this particular stall to then realise that it's actually octopus. And they caramelise the octopus. And I love octopus myself, personally. But they caramelise it. And but then the weird thing is you can see on the bottom part of that picture, they actually put a boiled egg inside the octopus's head there. So you will see some of these things, but I assure you, you're not going to get served anything like this in the restaurants that we use. This is the sometimes where you'll see some of the strange street food.
I guess that's an interesting take on the old idea of surf and turf.
Yeah.
Here's the tea ceremony. That's my fault. So I do apologise.
Right, no
out of order. So the tea ceremony itself. This is the thing that everybody has heard about. You know, as far as the UK is concerned, the tea ceremony is: do you put the milk in first or last? But in Japan, it's a little bit different. I understand.
Yeah, it is, and it's very much a ritual thing dating back many centuries, and it was really more for the wealthy Japanese. You get a smaller, condensed version of a tea ceremony, because if they do a full tea ceremony, it can go on for about 4 hours. But you have it with a tea master, and basically they just go through that whole ritual of serving you the tea. And it's very hard to explain as an experience, because you also get the opportunity to sort of copy what they're doing as well, with mixing up the green tea and using the brush that they use. But it is very, very ceremonial. And it's quite a spiritual thing as well. It's very difficult to explain. But certainly a number of people in my group were quite moved by the whole experience, but they couldn't tell you particularly why. And I just think we just don't do anything so much, particularly in this country anymore, that's so based on etiquette and doing things in an old-fashioned way, that when you see it and they take it so seriously, it's just a wonderful experience.
I mean, that's very interesting, because getting an understanding and getting an experience like that, where there are lots of very traditional ways of going about doing things, whether it's cooking or preparing food or eating food, sitting together, is a real kind of deep dive into the culture. But are there other things that you can do that are perhaps on a slightly lighter level, for example?
Yeah, certainly. So you've put the image up there of the fan painting. We have lots of sort of hands-on experiences. Fan paintings, wooden sake cup making, washi paper making. This is a visit to a wasabi farm and learning how they actually farm the land and create wasabi. I did a calligraphy lesson. There I am, whilst I was there. And that was great fun. Mine isn't as good as my traveling companions. Jeff, he did a much better version than I did. I was a bit heavy-handed with the brush. And we
won't hold that against you, Joe. But what do those characters say there?
I believe
Joe is not an artist.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely not Tony Hart. That's for sure. And but it's a great souvenir to come back with. I've still got that on my on the side of my fridge in my kitchen, and every time I look at it, it just reminds me of being in Japan with this group of people that I didn't particularly know, that I got to know during the course of the tour, and this wonderful woman who was so patient with us. I mean, I was rubbish. I really was.
Enthusiastic but rubbish is often the case.
Yeah.
Did this stuff play any bearing on how the group melded together? And should you actually drink it warm? That's what I've heard. Is that true?
No, it's not true. You shouldn't really drink it warm. It's served at room temperature is what sake should be served at. But there are different levels of sake. So the warmness, or where people talk about the warmness, is really about how that feels internally. Mm-hmm. So you can have a sort of mild sake, if you like, where it doesn't warm your inside. So it's a bit like drinking maybe a brandy, for example. You know, where some brandy, you can drink a brandy or a whiskey and you can go, oh, that's really warmed me up inside. So yeah, you shouldn't really heat it as such.
Okay, so sake is not particularly alcoholic though, is it, if I understand correctly?
Do you know what? I don't actually know, because I only had the one whilst I was there. I would imagine if you drank a lot of it.
I couldn't possibly comment, could I? Joe, we've covered a lot about food and drink. What I want to do now is just move on a little bit and understand a little bit more about traveling around and some of the accommodation and some of the travel experiences. Now, I do understand that there is a famous type of traditional Japanese inn called, and forgive my pronunciation, the ryokan, which is the one where apparently you sleep on the floor. Is that right?
Yeah, it's pretty much it. So there are a couple of types. There's two types actually in Japan. There's the traditional, where you are on the matted flooring and you just have a futon on there. And then there's also, we go to a place called Koyasan, which is quite a religious area, very famous for Buddhist monks, and there's a temple there. Sure. We have a guest house stay in this temple, and those there, they're sort of like the second level of ryokan, where the mattress is slightly off the floor and a bit higher.
Oh, wow.
Some people who might have a little bit of trouble getting down, but what they will do is that they're more happy to put more mattresses on if you are struggling with that. And they are incredibly comfortable. The futons are actually they don't look like they're that thick, but they are. The way that they're made, they are just incredibly comfortable. So yeah, and it's that experience of that element of traditional accommodation. But the majority of the time, we stay in lovely 4-star, well-located hotels. Excellent.
Now, so here we've got a couple of examples of how I think the Japanese, in probably the last 10 or 15 years, have adopted more of the Western script, and English in particular, and how you'll see signs, obviously, for the Bengal Cat Cafe. I'm assuming that's one of those cafes where you can stroke the cats rather than it's a cafe that caters for cats.
Yes, absolutely. And they've got various ones. You can see on the right-hand side of that picture, this was the one that I found the funniest and the most unusual, was the Hedgehog Cafe. Yeah, and they've got dog cafes, owl cafes, and the whole thing is about you being able to go in and spend some time with animals, because in a lot of the big cities, of course, they're unable to keep animals because the accommodation is high-rise. They've got a very condensed population, and this is one of the ways that they can interact with animals in a really nice environment.
Gotcha. Amazing. Okay, so tell us about the bullet train. Are they really as to the second as we are told?
Yeah, they are. It's not a myth. It really is quite incredible. And I'm going to make a comparison here, which again is a cultural one. But if you go to a train station in China, it's very busy, it's very loud, lots of people rushing about.
Yep.
You go to a train station in Japan, because of the way that they are, and they're much quieter, they set off on time. They know how long it takes them to get to their train station. They know what platform they're going to. They know the train will be on time. And it's all very calm and serene, and actually quite a lovely experience. So, and it's just a brilliant way to travel. I mean, it really is big, comfortable sort of airline style, business class seats almost. And you sit down and, yeah, you don't feel that you're traveling as fast as you are, but
I mean, they are ridiculously quick now. They're like 400 kilometers an hour, aren't they?
Yeah, well, the new maglev trains will be, which are the ones that they're building, which actually levitate. So they're magnets and they levitate. So there's no friction, and they think they'll have a full network of those up and running within the next 5 to 10 years. So by the time if we ever do build HS2, it will be sort of out of date. I mean, bearing in mind they've had bullet trains since 64, I think it was.
I was going to say it was certainly the 60s that the first ones, the Shinkansen was, and they were doing 150 miles an hour then.
Yeah. So
I remember the Intercity 125s, which ironically were not. Yeah, I'm as old as I look. They were not quite as quick as Mallard, believe it or not, which did 126. Anyway, enough of my nerdy train things. So let's move on a little bit, because there are so many iconic images. There's one. I'm assuming that's Mount Fuji. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And another really, really iconic image. It is these snow monkeys, who I believe are they red-faced macaques.
Yeah, they're the Japanese macaques, but yeah, colloquially known by everybody as the snow monkeys. So they reside up in the Spanish Alps. Sorry, the Japanese Alps. I don't know why I said Spanish Alps. Japanese Alps. And we go to see them in a place called Yudanaka, which is also known as Monkey Park. But they are wild, so they wander around in the forests, and they come down to spend the time in the hot springs, preening and warming themselves up.
So is there a better time to visit Japan? Because it seems to be that there's real seasonality there. Now we're no strangers to seasonality in the UK, but what are your experiences of traveling at various different times to Japan?
Yeah, so spring and autumn are definitely your optimum times, and their seasons are exactly the same time of year as ours. So really sort of March, April, May, absolutely fantastic. June, you start coming into that summer period, and it's very hot and humid, but also generally that first sort of 2-3 weeks, maybe even a bit longer in June, it's their rainy season. And then you come out the other side of the summer and you're into autumn, September, October, and early November. Again, absolutely stunning autumnal colors. So it's really spring and autumn are the best times to go.
Got you. So talking of spring, presumably that's the time when the famous cherry blossom is on the trees.
Yeah, so that's the end of March, beginning of April.
Right. And do the prices reflect that?
It is more expensive, but possibly not as much as people may think. On one of our tours, it's probably going to add £300 to £400 per person to go at cherry blossom time.
Right. And would you say for somebody who's got a bucket list destination, I want to see the classic Japanese sites, would you say that was the time to go?
I think it depends on how interested you are in horticulture, really, to be quite honest. So it is a great time to go. It's a very, very spiritual experience for the Japanese, but of course they're out enjoying it a lot as well. So not only have you got international tourists going, you've got all the local people out enjoying it. So that picture that you showed a while ago of that picnic underneath the cherry blossom, that's because it's cherry blossom season. So it's almost like they see it as their holiday time. Even though they may be working, they'll be out a lot.
Gotcha.
It can be very busy at that point in time. So I always say to people, if you want to go for cherry blossom, if it's something you really want to see, great, definitely do it. If not, go outside of it. It'll be a little bit quieter, and it will be a little bit cheaper as well.
Fantastic. No, it's really interesting to get that perspective, because if the cherry blossom is something that you got to see, then you've got to be there in the spring. But if that's not top of your list, then there's other alternatives. And another one of the questions that came from one of our clients was about doing those alternatives. And I think we've touched on one or two of those. But for the real classic, the Mount Fuji photo, how close, how possible, is it to get that beautiful, perfect cone with the snow-capped volcano photograph? How close can you get?
As brilliant as we are, Tim, of course, we can't cater for the weather. So the weather
why not?
Can always interrupt anything, of course. But what our guides will do is that they will try to get you there at the optimum time, and we can move things around. We do go up to the 5th station, which is the highest station you can go to by motor transport. And you can get some fantastic images from there. But we also cruise across Fuji 5 lakes, and you can get some great images from there as well. And then we take something called the Hakone Skyway, which is the ropeway, which is a cable car, which again, a fantastic view right across the valley to Mount Fuji. So you've got different options to be able to get that absolutely fantastic, iconic picture.
Got you. Well, almost from the sublime to the ridiculous then, the Japanese toilets, they're almost an attraction in themselves. And again, so I'm told, I haven't experienced these for myself, but I mean, you hear lots of stories.
Yeah.
Can you confirm or deny the appearance of jets from all different directions, and water and warm and heated seats and
music as well? They'll play music as well. So yeah, they do all of that. You've got to be quite. I didn't press too many of the buttons. Let's put it like that, because I was really unsure that, and I didn't want to break anything. But yeah, it is quite a lovely experience to sit down and contemplate the world in your hotel room with a nice warm seat. Excellent.
Okay, now there is a question that has been raised, which is about the geisha culture. And understanding, or viewing or experiencing the geisha culture. I mean, what's that all about? I mean, historically, it's had one role, but what's the role of the geisha in the modern Japan?
Yeah, it's a traditional thing now. So it's not that they particularly have a role in modern Japan as such. I mean, there's only about 1,000 geishas across the whole of the country now, but it is still they still do go through quite a rigorous sort of training finishing school, I guess, is what I always sort of equate it to, where they learn etiquette, they learn about poetry, performance, singing, dancing. You will see a lot of people dressed as geishas, so but a lot of them won't be actually fully trained proper geishas. One of the key ways to tell is the way that they actually walk in a kimono. So you'll see that most people, when they walk, they wear a kimono, they'll walk with their feet splayed out. A geisha is actually taught to walk with their feet inwards, which is really difficult and quite painful if you're not trained to do it. And the reason for that is to keep the shape of the kimono as pure and as perfect as it can possibly be. So that's one of the easiest ways to tell if it's just somebody, doing something for a tourist hut, for example, or it's.
So what you're saying there, Joe, really is if I were to dress in a kimono, I would give myself away, whereas you would fall into that perfect shape category.
Absolutely, Tim. I think there might be a few things might give it away as well on top of that. But
excellent.
But yeah.
Excellent. Joe, is this the kind of environment that we'll be staying in?
So this is a more that second level of Ryokan that I was sort of telling you about. So it's a bit of a mixture between that proper traditional and a sort of more Western. So this is where the mattress, as you can see, is slightly higher. You do have proper chairs there, as well as the being able to kneel down. So in a real traditional Ryokan, you wouldn't have those traditional chairs there, as an example.
Got you. So the chairs on the left-hand side there, they're very Western.
Yeah,
interesting. It's interesting how there's a blend of styles. Clearly, when it comes to the big cities and the major chains and whatnot, you'll be staying in the kind of hotels that we'd be used to. But this, as an alternative, is available, because that's another one of the questions that was asked, which is alternate visits, or alternative visits, different guides, different places. So to look at different kind of pastimes, some of the crafts, some of the amazing crafts, whether that's the kind of the bamboo or the woodworking, those kind of things we can organize together.
Yeah, so there's various different ways you can go on these tours with us. So you can book the tour, the group tour, straight out of the brochure, as it were, and they range from 8 days right the way up to 21 days. We have a tour which is called Japan by Rail, for example. So that's a lot of rail journeys to get around. We have other tours that have got different types of experiences on them. All of them will have a tea ceremony, because that's an absolute must.
Yep.
And then we have a tour called Offbeat Japan, which is you've got an image of a monk in Koyasan here. And that gets you off the beaten track a little bit more. You've got a little bit more free time. All of your meals are not included like they are on our other tours. So you've got a bit more time to explore and experience. And then, of course, we can tailor make. So if somebody really wants to do a lot more things that don't fit into the group tour, we can put that together, or they could do that as an extension. So it really is down to the customer and what they want to do and what fits for them, really.
Gotcha. So, I mean, this is just a little film. Hopefully, it's not breaking up too badly for everybody. That shows you a bit of the variety in terms of the locations. I think the first part of that one is that the shrine at Hiroshima.
Yeah, that was the A dome at Hiroshima.
Yeah.
And it's the only surviving building from that original blast that killed 80,000 people instantly.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands more afterwards. But of course, it's you go to the museum there. It's a fantastic experience. But Hiroshima itself is a very modern, cosmopolitan and young city because it had to be rebuilt. So it's worth visiting anyway, regardless of the fact that why most people do want to go there and spend time there.
Sure, I understand. Now, this is Takayama that you spoke about earlier on. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is my product manager. This is her favourite part of Japan. I haven't visited this area, so this is up in the Alps, and this is really, really rural Japan. So it's a village up in the Alps there, and you see this gasso is what it's called, architecture. And they say that it's built, it's thatched roofing, there's no nails in there at all. And it's built to represent the hands of Buddhist prayers, monks in prayer. But what it's really for is to actually, for the amount of snowfall that happens in the winter. So that's really why it's designed like that.
I mean, that steep angle there that you can see across a lot of the houses there is to shed the snow, to stop them from accumulating the weight of it and crushing it.
Absolutely, and with typical Japanese efficiency, that's not just good enough, because in the attics they actually cultivate silkworms as well.
And how does that help?
Well, it just gives them they're able to make silk.
Oh wow!
So it doesn't help with the snow.
So they're not only they create that space to keep it safe, but they're also using it for silk production. Yeah, how fascinating! I mean, this is one of those. This presumably is a typical village scene, maybe in the Alps. I'm looking at the background and saying, is this the kind of environment that you're well off the beaten track here?
Yeah, this is actually Takayama as well when you actually get right into it. So yeah, very different, as you can see from being in the big cities like Osaka or Tokyo, as an example.
And what we have here, then, I don't know whether, again, this is obviously still in the mountainous district, but that kind of classic Japanese, is that I'm assuming that's some kind of temple, is that right?
It's a castle. So this is Matsumoto Castle, known as the Black Crow Castle, due to the dark colouring on it.
Sure.
One of the other major Japanese castles you can visit is just outside of Osaka, which is Himeji Castle.
Is that one?
There you go, and that's the White Heron Castle. And
the Black Crow and the White Heron. How beautiful!
Yeah, and this is the best preserved castle in Japan out of the 12 that they have. That they are sort of UNESCO World Heritage sites, Japanese cultural icons, because it's never been inflicted with any conflict. And also no natural disasters either.
Wow, which in that part of the world is very rare. 12 castles of this nature. Now that's obviously a defended site with the moats dug around there with that angular. But that gives you an overview of kind of, are they the blossom trees in the foreground?
Yeah, you have got some blossom trees there in the foreground, and this is the I'd forgotten this image was in there. This is the star-shaped fort. And this is up in the northern island of Hokkaido. Most of the tourist sites in Japan, most people visit the main island of Honshu.
Sure.
And then you've got Hokkaido up in the north, and then you've got the very volcanic area with Mount Beppo and the hot springs down there in Kyushu, the southern island. There's about 6,500 islands in Japan, but 97% of the population are across those three.
Now, I understand that that's Mount Kyushu in the background there.
Yeah, it's Mount Aso. Sorry, but
Aso, I beg your
it's in
pardon.
Kyushu. Yeah.
Kyushu is the area,
It's
and
the
Mount
name of the
Aso is the
island.
name of the mountain.
Yeah.
And that's an active volcano. I mean, we're on the Pacific Ring of Fire, and there's lots
Absolutely.
of seismic activity there.
Yeah, so you have the Beppu hot springs here, which, unlike the hot springs that we take people to up near Yudanaka, for example, where they can actually bathe in a Japanese onsen, which is a fabulous experience. Those hot springs, you can't go in. They would fry you alive.
Oh, right, a bit like Yellowstone then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, good
Right.
analogy.
Okay. I mean, beautiful and amazing to watch from a distance. Don't get too close, really.
That's it.
Fabulous. Now, is this the cable car that we were talking about earlier on?
Yeah, this is the Hakone Ropeway, so you can see Mount Fuji in the background. This basically takes you up to a summit. There's a small temple at the top of the summit as well, and you get these fantastic views across the valley. And you also do a cruise with us across Mount Fuji, Five Lakes, and Lake Ashi as well. And you get some fabulous views from there.
Incredible.
And you can learn how to make sushi.
Well, we did start with, is it all about raw fish? But there's a little bit of sushi. But I mean, I guess no tour of Japan is going to be complete without a visit to Tokyo. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, of course, you've got to do Tokyo, and it's like no place I've ever been by any stretch of the imagination. It is what you expect, with it being very vibrant, very busy, the neon lit, very futuristic. But you don't have to go far from sort of the Shibuya district, really getting away from that to the more traditional side. So the Asakusa district, which is absolutely stunning. Yogi Park, which is just a short walk from this sort of square that you're looking at here, the Shibuya district, where up to 3,000 people can cross that zebra crossing at any one point in time.
I mean,
a lot of films and.
Yeah, I say that's been a lot of films, or are there lots of those in Tokyo? Is this particular one just?
No, this is the one. This is the one. So it's like Times Square in New York times 10. It's just it's something to behold, and just the random stuff that you see in Tokyo as well. You know, suddenly somebody will come driving around in a tourist go-kart thing dressed as Super Mario. You know. The vending machines everywhere that they say, you know, there's one for every 23 people in Japan.
Yeah, we don't need to go into the details of what's possible to purchase at vending machines, but suffice to say there are lots.
There are indeed.
And then you've got this kind of environment, which is this also within the city?
Yeah, it is. So again, it's not too far away, and this is the Asakusa district that I was telling you about, and it's the only area where there's two religions that share the same complex. You've got the Shinto shrine and also the Buddhist temple there, and you've got under that sort of red lantern there, that's known as the Thunder Gate. It's about 250 odd years old, I think, but it doesn't look it. But it's again just one of those areas. The great thing about Japan, it's just a great place to just stand, watch, soak up the atmosphere, wander around, look at things, and just be in, and things will happen around you.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I find that absolutely fantastic, and I'd love to do that kind of thing. Not everybody necessarily wants to be quite as independent, and they want to make sure that they see some of the classic sites. So, what can you guys and Wendy Wu do to help us out with that one? Do you think, when it comes to a tour of the city?
Yeah, well, you always get that with us anyway. So, you know, you are going to see all of the must-sees and a few sort of, you know, maybe things that you're not aware of as well. When we're in Tokyo, we'll definitely take you up to the Skytree as well to get a view of the whole of the city. It's the tallest tower in the world, and the lift travels at some speed, let me tell you. And but it's just a great experience, and you get up there. And you know, you can look across the whole of the city as it just sprawls out and out and out. And so you'll get all those must-sees, but you know, we will take you a little bit off the beaten track, and you'll get some of those unique experiences as well.
Fabulous. Joe, we've taken a little bit more time than we normally do, so thank you so much.
About that.
No, not at all. It's a whole country, and it's an incredibly fascinating country, and I do get a little bit carried away with all of the details. So, Joe, thank you so much for your time, for all of your trouble in putting together these incredible images and films. Hopefully, everybody, they've come across reasonably well. I know that my broadband isn't quite what it should be. Thank you all very, very much indeed for your time as well, for giving up nearly an hour of your time this evening. As Joe says, there's many, many things that we can do. If we have whetted your appetite for a trip to Japan, come and have a chat with us by all means. Ping us an email, phone, whichever way is best for you. But thank you to all of our clients very, very much indeed for your time this evening. We will drop you an email with another one of these when we've sorted out where we're going to go to next. I did promise, having been a long way west last time, that we come a long way east this time. We've been to Antarctica as well. We're going to have to find somewhere a little bit further north. But anyway, thank you all very, very much indeed. Joe, thank you. Good night. Enjoy your evenings and take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Sayonara.
Sayonara. Toro arigato.